it's producer Mark at KCMO Talk Radio, and if you're an NFL or college football fan, check out my weekly sports betting podcasts. Search College Pick'em Program or Sunday Sharps wherever you get your podcasts, and hit that subscribe button for my weekly picks, including the Chiefs, Mizzou, Kansas, and K-State. Now here's the Monday in the Morning podcast.
I just did a quick Google search, and all I typed into Google were these three words: Kamala Harris concession. And here are some of the headlines at 6:05 on a Thursday morning. Politico: Kamala Harris concedes the election, but not the fight. Washington Post: Kamala Harris concedes with dignity and grace. The Guardian: Harris voters mourn loss after sobering concession speech. And MSNBC writes the four most important words in Kamala Harris's concession speech. I watched it yesterday afternoon. It came on at about 3:30. So I'm listening to Guy Benson on my Google Home, as I hope many of you are as you get your morning started here on KCMO 95.7 FM. Just tell it to play KCMO Talk Radio. And then I pop it on TV. And I was home. Kate had to take Claire out to go to the dentist. So I've got the baby, and then our middle child was actually taking a nap. Tried to get her up, and she didn't want to get up. So I said, fine, I'll go watch Kamala's speech. So I'm watching Kamala's speech, and I did, as I told you I would yesterday, crack a beer. I took a video. I put it up on the Facebook page, Pete Mundo on KCMO. I didn't want to put it on the company page. I didn't know if they'd like that or not. But I did a cheers to you as Kamala's giving her speech. And right as I took that video with the speech going on behind me, they show and they pan to this lady in the audience who's like clearly on the verge of tears as I'm giving you a big cheers with my beer. It was actually quite entertaining. I wish I could have timed it that perfectly on purpose. It just happened to work out that way. And I'm watching Kamala Harris, and I'm thinking to myself, this is actually as genuine as I've heard her since she became the nominee. Now, that doesn't take much. I'm not saying it was this incredible barn burner of a speech, but it's kind of like the athlete who can't get it done in the game. He's too wound up, but then in practice, he's like lights out. You know, pick the sport, football, basketball. Maybe basketball's the best reference. Dude can't miss from three in practice. I mean, he has money. You put him anywhere on the court, he is draining it from downtown. He gets in the game, brick, clank, brick, clank. He just can't make a shot. That's what I felt like I was watching yesterday with Kamala Harris. Like suddenly nothing mattered anymore, and there was a little more ease to her delivery. She stopped thinking about whatever her advisors were telling her and how to be this perfect cookie-cutter candidate. And she kind of just talked. Now, once again, it wasn't great, but it was a far better version of Kamala Harris than what anybody had seen the last 3 months.
Who are watching, it is okay to feel sad and disappointed. But please know it's going to be okay. On the campaign, I would often say, when we fight, we win. But here's the thing. Sometimes the fight takes a while. That doesn't mean we won't win. The important thing is don't ever give up. Don't ever stop trying to make the world a better place. You have power. And don't you ever listen when anyone tells you something is impossible because it has never been done before.
So that was Kamala Harris. And at the end there, she says, don't listen when somebody tells you it hasn't been done before. In many respects, that's an all-American message. That's a message that every American can get behind. Now, of course, the insinuation there is that there has not been a female president, but that's not really at all what this election was about. Hillary Clinton was much more about the let's elect the first female president. Kamala Harris's campaign was less about that because it just wasn't going to work. I know there's been some analysis saying America's not ready for a woman president. Please, that's nonsense. It's complete and utter nonsense. Donald Trump just won 300 electoral college votes. It looks like that's where it's going to land, if not well over 300. And he won the popular vote. First time a Republican's done that in 20 years. You think it's about a woman president? You're not paying attention. But anyway, like the cadence, the hand gestures, everything was just more natural yesterday for Kamala Harris. Now, I'm not saying that Kamala would have won, but it would have been a lot better than whatever the Democrats put up there for the last 3 months, because that was wholly unimpressive. And I always find it interesting when Democrats make the point, like Kamala Harris did there, don't listen when someone says you can't do something. You know, this is America. You do you. You do what you want. It's like, yeah, I agree. But you guys tell me I need the government to help me succeed at every turn. You guys tell me without Big Brother, without some big government operation giving me handouts, well, not me as a white guy, but you get the point, giving people handouts all over the country, then, you know, we can't ever succeed. So which one is it? It was refreshing to hear. I appreciated hearing it, but I also very much appreciated it coming as a concession speech. That did feel extra special yesterday afternoon. I'm not going to lie. So I'm reading some of the analysis, and I see this headline piece in the New York Times yesterday. I actually have been going to the New York Times more in the last 24 hours than I have in the last 24 months, because they do have, I believe, the best and most interactive election map, where you can break it down by state, by county. It's, I would say, the one thing the New York Times does well. Do they still do movie reviews? Maybe they do those well. I'm not sure. But their headline piece last night was titled, "In Trump's Win, GOP Sees Signs of a Game-Changing New Coalition." It says Donald Trump picked up support among Latino and Black working-class voters, giving the party hope for a new way to win in a diversifying nation. Well, it's interesting because we were told, and we have been told now for many cycles in a row, that Republicans were wholly reliant on simply white voters. That's all the party was, bunch of white people, especially old white people, and it was never going to get better. There's nothing they could do. And the Democrats had the media on their side. They had institutions on their side. They had Hollywood on their side. To say, oh, yeah, the Republicans, no, you're not going to vote for them. They're racist anyway. They're just a bunch of white people. And in many ways, this is the revenge of the working class. Not in 2016, where it was the revenge of the largely white working class. 2016 was all about Hillbilly Elegy, that's J.D. Vance's memoir, and those forgotten men and women in rural, rustic parts of America who largely had been forgotten by the elites and the upper class, especially in the Beltway. But this is not about that. This is about the revenge of the working class of all stripes, of all backgrounds, of all colors. As the New York Times notes here, nationally, Hispanic majority counties on average shifted towards Mr. Trump by 10 percentage points. That includes Yuma County, Arizona, a heavily Latino county along the southern border with Mexico, where Mr. Trump is on track to win by nearly 30 percentage points. They add Trump's gains with black voters, less significant but still very notable in smaller communities across Georgia. Trump shifting tens of thousands of votes in some of these majority black counties with no more than 15,000 people. The Trump campaign celebrated a victory in Baldwin County, Georgia. 42% of the population is black. Republicans had not won the county for decades. Asian Americans also drifting away from Democrats, according to exit polls and unofficial returns. Latinos, working class blacks, Asian Americans, all voting for a guy who the legacy media continued to tell you for weeks and weeks and months leading up to this election that he was a felon, that he was a racist, that he was a fascist. Everything they could throw on him, they threw. And regular, common, everyday Americans said, you're full of crap. They said it to ABC. They said it to MSNBC. They said it to The View, to LeBron James, to Taylor Swift, to Bruce Springsteen, to so many others. And they said, you know what? I think I know what's in my best interests. And it's not what you're telling me it is. Because also, the message on Tuesday, identity politics is dead. And thank goodness for that. 6:15, it is great to be here on a Thursday morning on KCMO Talk Radio. We're going to continue to get to you, to hear from you, to get reaction. I think we missed so many. I mean, we couldn't get to everybody yesterday. We missed so many calls, but we are continuing to just get information on what exactly happened on Tuesday. And yes, we'll get to some of the good tiers here locally and nationally as well. The other shifts that are happening, we'll talk about next on 95.7 FM KCMO. New York Times headline piece last night nailed it. In Trump's win, GOP sees signs of game-changing new coalition, with Trump picking up support amongst Latino and Black working-class voters, along with Asian American voters who make up the fastest-growing eligible electorate in the country, although that's never stopped them before. But the fastest growing eligible electorate in the country is Asian Americans, and they moved towards Republicans and towards Donald Trump. Now, why might that be? Well, think about it. As the Democratic Party has remained steadfast on identity politics, who has that hurt? Asian Americans in higher education. The lawsuits that were around some of the Ivy League institutions, notably Harvard, were about how Asian Americans were being targeted, right? They were the ones being hurt the most by the DEI initiatives and the equity initiatives of these higher education institutions that just picked and chose winners and losers based on their skin color and gave preferential treatment to people based on their skin color instead of just saying, who are the students who are doing the best, who are worthy of coming into our institution? That didn't hurt white people. That destroyed Asian American students who were trying to get into these top tier institutions. So, that's just one example. Plus the fact that the Asian American community makes the most money in this country, more than white people. People make it all white versus black. It's not. When it comes to income, Asian Americans make the most money on any racial group in America, and it's not even all that close. They have incredible value and focus on family and family structure. A lot of focus, obviously, on what goes on in the classroom. And guess what? It works out for them, considering they make the most money in America. They literally live the American dream. And I speak that in broad terms, obviously, because it's not a one-size-fits-all deal, but they do kind of have those things layered out when it comes to strong family structure, when it comes to focus on education, and then amazingly, they make the most money. It's interesting how that works, huh? Good, solid family units, a focus on education, and you're ahead of 90+% of people. It's not rocket science. So they're shifting towards Donald Trump and the Republican Party. And that's where, if the Democrats are going to have an honest conversation about what's happened here, they've got to look at what groups shifted away from them. And here's the reality. Every single group except for two shifted away from them. I'm going to list off the groups that shifted away from the Democrats in this election from 2020. White non-college men, white non-college women, whites overall, men 45 to 64, white college men, females overall, 30 to 44-year-olds, 18 to 29-year-olds shifted 10 to 15 points towards Trump. Hispanics, a 15-plus swing to Trump. Asians, a 20-point swing to Trump. Blacks, about a 10-point swing towards Donald Trump. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 12 groups that shifted towards Donald Trump from 4 years ago. There are two groups that shifted towards Kamala Harris. What do you think those two groups are? And they were very slight shifts. Any guesses? I'm going to give you a second to put on your thinking cap and give me a guess.
College-educated white women for 50, please.
Ding, 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 ding. We have a winner, and his name is John Anthony, and that means you have to still work till 10 o'clock this morning. John, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that means you can leave at 11:30.
Right. Nailed it. Yeah. Yes, that is one of the groups. You're absolutely right. White college women shifted slightly towards Kamala Harris, and the other one, 65 plus, shifting towards Kamala Harris. But once again, very slight. Like 2 points maybe of a shift for 65 plus and white college women towards Kamala Harris. The only two demographics.
Maybe some of the drugs from the 70s are coming back around on those secondary trips.
I don't know what's going on. As long as it's not laced with fentanyl, then that's okay, I guess. But it's clearly having an impact on their brains a little bit. I don't know. But that is exactly the story of this election. There were major demographic shifts across all races, across all ages, and across, yes, both genders. And hopefully now we can get back to a world where we talk about there being only two genders. That would be great if there was an awakening on that. And I saw some of that yesterday. Representative Congressman Tom Suzy from New York said, quote, Democrats have to stop pandering to the far left. He adds, I don't want to discriminate against anybody, but I don't think biological boys should be playing in girls' sports. Whoa!
Talk about a bombshell.
Welcome to the party, brother. Welcome to the land of common sense. It's fun over here. Mark's in Liberty. What's up, Mark?
Good morning. Listen, this was a death knell for the establishment. People are sick of business as usual. There should not be that much of a difference between Republican and Democrat, and that is why the America First populist message resonated with the nation. And that's why Trump won. It's that simple.
Yeah, thank you very much there, Mark. Absolutely. You're right about that. If the Democrats are smart, they'll go back to being Bill Clinton's Democrat Party. Like, for all the talk about how Trump is this crazy guy, the reality is Trump says stuff that comes off as crazy sometimes. But when you go back and look at the policy, it's not nearly as crazy as they make it out to be. It never was. Now, I know there's, meltdown mode on social media, and you can find TikToks of people thinking they're going to be sent into internment camps and the whole thing. I mean, it's insane. It's literally insane. And you heard some of that on The View yesterday, which I told you I was going to Joy Watch, and I did. And I'll get to that here coming up on KCMO. But for all the bluster, for all the crazy tweets and all those different things, when it comes to actually governing, it wasn't all that nutty at all. And if they brought back Bill Clinton and said, hey, can you give us your playbook from 1992? This thing might have turned out a lot different. But they've chosen not to do that. And now you have members of their own party saying, yeah, we have to stop pandering to the far left. 913-408-7957 at 628 on a Thursday morning on KCMO. Let's get to some of the tiers, locally and nationally, next. Where do you guys want to start the fun this morning at 6:35? I mean, we're always having fun, but when it comes to this topic in particular, when it comes to some of the tiers, do you want to start locally or do you want to start nationally with cable news or The View? You give me. Dealer's choice. What do you want, John?
Well, I enjoy the national ones quite a bit.
Okay,
I'm familiar with some of the locals and their variations on a theme, so
okay,
then
we'll start.
Fun, like, do you have Behar? Or
yeah,
like that?
Okay. Oh, I got them all, John.
I haven't seen them.
Okay, all right, then we'll do national for now, and I'll get to the local stuff here at some point this morning.
May I throw in a quick message? I know people call here, Lefty's Losing It, Rita Panahi on YouTube from the Australian, I forgot which network it is, but it's the Australian version of BBC or Sky News.
Okay.
Sky News. They'll be funny because they'll put the clips together as well. But she has some great interactions, so let's have some fun here.
All right, let's get to The View. I've got multiple options here from yesterday. I told you when the show ended, and they were all dressed in black for the show yesterday as well.
Seriously.
It was like a funeral, yes. So they're dressed in black all on The View yesterday. And let's start with, since you mentioned her, John, let's start with Joy Behar.
In Finland, kids in nursery school are learning to discern between fake news and real news. Yeah. They should be teaching that in this country. Yes. Teach children tolerance. Teach them to think critically.
Come on, you dumbasses. You voted for you stupid SOB kids, and your schools are failing us. And God, what are we doing here?
Aren't you teaching your children tolerance? Right? As they go, it's a matter of fact of daily life when you have multiple children.
You would think.
Yeah.
And that comment from Joy Behar was followed up by this.
Well, it would help if we could regulate social media, because one of the biggest offenders is D.C. and Congress have not been able to do one thing in regard to the rogue corporations of social media.
It's not going to get any better with Elon Musk now in the administration.
These ladies lie every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the audacity and the stupidity to get on television yesterday after Donald Trump wins and say the problem is we need a big bureaucracy to regulate social media from fake news when they are the definition of fake news. The problem is this. The jig is up.
Mm-hmm.
Social media has made them less relevant because people can look up their own facts. I always say, and you know, once in a while, I'm not perfect. I'm a human being. I'll get something wrong. And some of you will either call John and tell him, or you'll text into the show and I'll see it, or Mark will see it, or you'll DM me and you'll say, hey, I think you were off on whatever the topic was. And I want to know that because it's never my intent to give you anything that's not accurate. Now, I'll give you opinions off of what is accurate news, but I don't want to be inaccurate about anything. But in the case of The View, what they're upset by is the fact that they can't lie to you and just assume you're going to accept it. That's what really offends them deep down. It's not about whether or not you can access certain things they don't like. They just don't want you to be able to do it. So you see how this would work? They would want some big bureaucracy overseen by the federal government to control what you and anybody else can put out on social media. So then you're more reliant on their BS and their nonsense every day, and you can't cross-reference or fact-check them anymore.
I don't think they want the government to run it. I think they want the grade school kids in Finland
to be in charge.
They seem to be impressed with their abilities.
They do seem to be impressed with their abilities.
This guy is blue. This guy is orange, which is false. You know, what level are they working with this news? You know what I mean?
Finland?
Right.
Oh,
Finland.
my gosh. All right. Let's go to, this is good. Sonny Hostin. Here we go.
I want to dig further into the demographics because black women tried to save this country again last night. 92% of black women voted for the vice president. You have Latinas in the 70 percentile voting for the vice president. What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him. And you have, and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
Right.
So why do you think that uneducated white women voted against their reproductive health freedoms? And why do you think Latino men voted in favor of someone that's going to deport, says he's going to deport the majority of his community?
White women like being called uneducated white women. I think the economy matters, national security matters. But when you put people in these boxes, I think that's a takeaway from this race.
We have to look at the demographics.
Sonny Hostin browbeating white women and Latino men. Anytime that comes up, I just think of the Blazing Saddles line. Where the white women at?
Yeah.
It's like, are you kidding me?
Uneducated white women.
You uneducated white women. You don't know what's in your best interest.
Term.
If only you got an education, you would know what's in your best interest. Gosh, exactly right. How condescending is that from Sonny Hostin? You are too stupid, white women, especially her words, uneducated white women, to know what's in your best interests, says Sonny Hostin on The View yesterday. It was full-blown meltdown mode. You know, what's interesting is the one difference in demographics they didn't note, and she didn't want to note there because it's not as compelling to her point. The bigger difference is not, in her words, educated versus uneducated, which really just means college degree, which doesn't actually mean you know anything, as we well know, right?
Probably less.
In today's college climate. The most important thing to understand about the female side in American politics today is this. Married women broke for Donald Trump 50-48. Unmarried women voted for Kamala Harris 60-37. That's the breakdown. It's not white educated, white uneducated. It's married women, Trump 50, Harris 28. Unmarried women, Harris 60, Trump 37. Why do you think that it seems like every policy pushed by the left side of the aisle does not encourage family structure, does not encourage settling down, whether it's their policies, whether it's the culture that they embrace? It's not about settling down, having a family, getting married, having kids. Really nothing. I mean, they will mask it as that. But at the core, when you cut through it, nothing that they do is really about people that want to live that kind of a life.
Right? You know, the uneducated white women, how could they vote against their own reproductive rights?
Yeah.
It's called morals.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe because they think about buying eggs and bread more than aborting unborn children. Maybe that's why. You know, there's a novel concept for you. And I'll leave you with this gem as we go through the greatest hits from The View yesterday, the funeral that was The View yesterday. It was John's choice. He wanted to go national, so we're going national for the segment here.
I love it.
Sonny Hostin as well. Here we go. Identity politics. Roll the tape.
As a woman of color, I was so hopeful that a mixed-race woman married to a Jewish guy could be elected president of this country. Mm-hmm. And I think that it had nothing to do with policy. I think this was a referendum of cultural resentment in this country.
Well, a referendum of cultural resentment in this country. Really? So let me get this straight. After she bags on what she calls uneducated white women, she then says she was hopeful to have a mixed-race person married to a Jew in the White House. Maybe education doesn't really mean a lot when it comes to how smart you are. I keep coming back to that because if that was a big theme for you, voting for somebody based on their race and their sex and the fact that they're married to a Jewish guy, that really says a lot about you and how shallow you are and also how privileged you are to be in a bubble where you can care about stuff like that.
Are we playing a game of Clue here? Colonel Mustard in the kitchen with the candlestick?
Yeah.
I'll take a Jew and a half-breed in the office. Come on. Right?
Oh, man, that's so good. And it's so true.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Like they are so caught up in this woke little Manhattan, New York bubble that they can't see the forest through the trees. They can't see what happened on Tuesday night. So instead, they'll browbeat women for not doing their job for their own reproductive rights, air quotes. And I really wanted to see a mixed race with a Jew. You're in New York. You can see that every day. Okay? I mean, what do you need? Jeez.
You'll walk by him every day, right?
I mean, gosh, go out on the street corner for 2 seconds. I really wanted to see it in the White House, though. Okay, well, guess what? Working class, everyday people caring more about other stuff, like buying homes, paying mortgages, affording rent, buying bread, buying eggs, making their car payments, than they did seeing a Jewish guy in the White House as the first gentleman. And, Jewish people weren't really all that interested in that either. Jewish Americans shifted tremendously towards Donald Trump. So even Jewish Americans were like, nah, I don't need the Jew in the White House right now. I'm good. I need somebody of competence in the White House right now. Look in the mirror. Realize what happened here. And then please try to get back to us when you have a little more of an understanding. 913-408-7957. It's 6:45. Pete Mundo with you on KCMO. We'll get to Quentin Lucas next hour. That'll be a doozy at 7:30 on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
As a woman of color, I was so hopeful that a mixed-race woman married to a Jewish guy could be elected president of this country. Mm-hmm. And I think that it had nothing to do with policy. I think this was a referendum of cultural resentment in this country.
Well, that was Sonny Hostin on The View yesterday during the funeral therapy session that they were on. What a gem.
I thought that was Mean Girls.
And just so we're all on the same page, she says a multicultural woman married to a Jewish guy. Well, tell that to the Jewish voters. In New York State, 45% of Jewish voters cast their ballot for Donald Trump. That's a 50% increase from 4 years ago when only 30% of Jewish voters in that state, a heavily Jewish state, obviously, voted for Donald Trump. Kamala Harris got 55% of the New York Jewish vote. That is down from Joe Biden's 69%. And it's not just about Israel and the Middle East. It's also about, many Jewish Americans. While I know the Democratic Party has had a stranglehold on that contingency for a very long time, I think just like with Black America and Latino America, it's starting to break because Jewish Americans are not inherently woke. They're not. Like, they're old school blue dog Democrats, but they're not woke. And that's what's driving so many people away from the Democratic Party. It's not only that, yes, I think Donald Trump's policies are mostly common sense, as much as there's a lot of bluster. It's just looking at it and saying, I ain't voting for that anymore. You guys have lost me. But according to Sonny Hostin on The View, oh, man, I really wanted the multiracial lady with the Jewish guy. Well, even the Jews were like, nah, I'm good. I'll pass. 913-408-7957. Paul is in Kansas City as a proud Jew himself. Go ahead, Paul.
Yes, sir. Pete, a woman doesn't have to have a sheepskin hanging on her wall to know when she goes to the grocery store that a half a bag of potato chips is $6. If she opens up her car insurance bill and it's double what it was last month. That's what she doesn't understand. That's why they lost the election. If they continue to think like that, good. We'll take it. Good examples, too. The bags of chips, it's unbelievable. The bag of Doritos has less Doritos in it, and it's like $5 or $6, and the bag is smaller than it ever was. Yes, and you don't need a sheepskin hanging on your wall to figure that out, Sonny Austin. So keep thinking like that. And you're also right. Car insurance has skyrocketed, one of the many things that continues to go up. That's a good point there, Paul. You're right. That's why I think this was, over the summer sometime. I had the girls in Hy-Vee with me. It's not Hy-Vee's fault. I'm not blaming them at all. the profit margins for these food stores are like 1%. But of course, they see
gouging.
The low. Yeah,
should be 0.5%.
big grocery. Yeah. Take them down.
Big food.
Yeah, big food, big grocery. We're gonna get them down. It's like they see the low hanging fruit with the bag of Doritos. And I don't, listen. I'm not a stickler. I know that stuff is crap for you. But once in a while, if I'm feeling soft, they can get something out of me like that. But I look at the bag, and it's smaller than the bag was when I was a kid. I can feel it. There's less Doritos in it. It's like a big fluffy bag that just feels like air. So the bag's smaller, there's less Doritos in it, and it's running me $6.
You're looking at your chips going, who packed this thing, Mike Lindell?
Mr. Mustache himself.
My pillow.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. So just out of principle, could I get the $6 bag of Doritos? Sure, it's no skin off my back, but just out of principle, I'm like, no, we're not doing it today. Sorry, girls, but no. It's just, and I know Mark's a big chip guy. Mark would love to see Big Chip taken down.
I love Big Chip.
I know.
I used to love Big Chip.
But you got priced out of Big Chip, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Got to go off-brand now.
I know.
I'm saying, man, go to Aldi's, get your Clancy's.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know if there's an off-brand Cool Ranch Dorito. Is there?
No, not that I'm aware of.
I didn't think so.
No.
I will go off-brand. I will go off-brand on potato chips. I will go off-brand on tortilla chips. Mm-hmm. In fact, the off-brand tortilla chips are sometimes better than the big brands.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think you can find off-brand Cool Ranch Doritos or even regular Doritos. If you do have any idea on that, please let us know, because that would be news to me.
Maybe Silva's here in town is listening. We can get something done.
Yeah, sure. Whoever. Somebody get something done for me. On the text line, Pete, I've seen a ton of posts of people crying about voting for Donald Trump, a felon rapist, over a woman. Do you have any witty comments to combat these comments? Nah, man, just keep scrolling. Don't waste your time. Keep scrolling. Let them pout. Keep it moving. Now, if they come after you, different story. But I like winning with grace. The numbers completely back us up. And as I put on X last night, and I think this is a very important point, one of the best parts of this week is we don't have to listen to the abolish the Electoral College ridiculousness. Trump won the Electoral College. Looks like it's going to be about 300. And then he also won the popular vote by several million because he closed the gap in blue states like New York, where he swung it 15 points in his direction. He lost by 10, whereas he lost it by 23 4 years ago. So I'm all about winning with grace and letting the numbers tell the story. And also, if they want to pout about it and make it all about, oh, no one wants a woman president and I can't believe people voted for a felon, then you know what? They are going to be stuck in that echo chamber and that bubble, and they will continue to lose elections, and they're going to be shocked as to why. Instead of looking in the mirror and saying, gosh, what did we do wrong the last 4 years? The American people gave you an opportunity in 2021 when the Democrats had the White House, the House, and the Senate. And now it looks like it's going to totally flip the other way. Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio. 6 o'clock hours in the books. Quentin Lucas will be here at 7:30. On 95.7 FM, we're streaming all morning long on the app, on the Alexa, and on the Google Home. So just tell it to play KCMO Talk Radio, and we'll pop right up there in your kitchen or in your bedroom. I know, it might be creepy to have me in your bedroom, but I'm just saying, if you got the Alexa there, Daddy, yeah, that ad from last week. Well done there, John. Nice reference. All right, the big man has spoken. Who is that? We'll tell you next.
It's morning, so it's Mundo. Now let's get back in there so we can give her the news. Daddy.
What's your name? What's your name? Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy?
That may be my favorite ad of the entire election season. It's so gross. It's so bizarre. It was from last week or 2 weeks ago, and it was really an ad directed at young men, trying to get them to vote for Democrats because they were breaking heavily for Republicans. Democrats knew it. So they put together this creepy ad of this guy sleeping with a woman and then going to get Plan B from his bathroom when an old white Republican congressman shows up and tells him, you can't use that because I'm in charge now. And then the young guy goes, no, I can't be a father. And he goes, sorry, I'm your boss. I'm your daddy. Let's go break the news. It's like, yep, that didn't work. Can you believe that ad did not work with 18 to 29-year-old young men? Gosh, I can't. That is just a shocker to me.
Talk about a bombshell.
I know. Stunning. Absolutely stunning. And then they wonder why they're struggling with young men. They tried to scare them, is what they did. Who's talking about Plan B in this election? My gosh. That's all they had. Like, they denigrate young men, and then they say, vote for us, because if you don't vote for us, you just can't have all the willy-nilly unprotected sex you want and then go use Plan B, which is not a platform for anybody anyway. So can't believe that strategy didn't work. My goodness. Just like the pick of Tim Walz, who, if you saw him yesterday, he was crying as Kamala Harris was giving her concession speech. That guy, he's not the reason Kamala lost. They cannot point the finger at him. It would not have mattered based on some of the margins in some of these states. But that guy still will go down as the goofiest pick of all time for a vice president. I mean, who possibly thought that was a good idea?
Somewhere Dan Quayle is laughing and pointing.
I don't know if this has come out yet, but I feel like they wanted Shapiro and he said no. I don't know if that's true or not, but if it comes out, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, here's what I will say about Josh Shapiro, the Pennsylvania governor. I believe they were very interested, but I do think Shapiro's the kind of guy who wants to run for president himself. And maybe he thought like he was going to be too boxed in with the Harris team. And he didn't want to maybe attach himself to a potential sinking ship, because it is true that had Shapiro been the VP pick and then they lost anyway, which I think they would have based on how things played out, that would not have been good for him trying to then launch his own presidential career in 2028. But in the end, I don't think he would have turned it down unless they were really trying to box him in and hamstring him. I can't see you saying no, because if nothing else, it does build your brand more nationally. But I guess anything's possible. I want to believe that, Mark, because I can't imagine picking Tiananmen Tim over Josh Shapiro. I mean, and they clearly don't vet the spouses well enough over there either. She was so goofy. She talked to people like they were in kindergarten. We're going to turn the page. Turn the page. It was so condescending. My gosh, if I wanted that, I drive up the road here, take Antioch up north, make a right, and end up in Corinth Square and see plenty of that nonsense from woke white people.
It's that awkward thing where somebody steps out of who they really are. They're, she wasn't the cheerleader kind of person,
but tried to be.
Right. And you're just bad at it when you do it. Don't do that.
I'm just amazed that Tim never pulled a hamstring with all those kick moves he would do on stage. I mean, geez. I'll give him that. He's got some flexibility to him because most guys his age would have blown out a back or pulled a hammy or done something with all the leg kicks he was doing up there. Jeez.
I like that. There was a Will Smith movie. He was teaching Kevin, I can't remember the actor's name, but how to dance and be a gentleman, and Kevin was doing the goofy steps. Like, don't do that.
Kevin James.
Yes.
Go, right?
Oh, yeah.
Will Smith,
yes.
Kevin James.
Yes,
movie.
Will Smith, Kevin James. Hitch.
There we go. It
there
would
you
help
go.
when I remember these things.
Yes.
Yeah,
no,
Hitch. So Will Smith's like, don't do that.
Don't do that. Well, no one told Tim Walz to not do that, and they should have.
Used Hitch.
Yep. So Barack Obama has put out a statement. And here's the Barack Obama statement from yesterday on the results of the 2024 presidential election. And Obama's one of the big losers here that's getting overlooked. I mean, he now has gone up against Donald Trump 3 times and tried to beat him, and he's lost to him twice. Obama writes here, over the last few weeks and through Election Day, millions of Americans cast their votes, not just for president, but for leaders at every level. Now the results are in, and we want to congratulate President Trump and Senator Vance on their victory. This is obviously not the outcome we hoped for, given our profound disagreements with the Republican ticket on a whole host of issues. But living in a democracy is about recognizing that our point of view won't always win out and being willing to accept the peaceful transfer of power. Michelle and I could not be prouder of Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, 2 extraordinary public servants who ran a remarkable campaign, and we will always be grateful to the staff and volunteers who poured their heart and soul into electing public servants they truly believe in. As I said on the campaign trail, America has been through a lot over the last few years, from a historic pandemic and price hike resulting from the pandemic to rapid change and the feeling a lot of folks have that no matter how hard they work, treading water is the best they can do. Those conditions have created headwinds for Democratic incumbents around the world. And last night showed America's not immune. The good news is that these problems are solvable, but only if we listen to each other. And only if we abide by the core constitutional principles and democratic norms that made this country great. Obama writes here, in a country as big and diverse as ours, we won't always see eye to eye on everything, but progress requires us to extend good faith and grace, even to people with whom we disagree with. That's how we've come this far. It's how we'll keep building a country that is more fair and more just, more equal, and more free. That is from Barack Obama on social media yesterday. Now, there are people who are going to read that who are probably going to shed a tear. Here's the problem. Obama was the guy who was on the campaign trail the last couple of weeks calling Donald Trump every name in the book. And now he's like, we're going to keep building and we're going to find agreement where we can. It's like, yes, I'm good with that, President Obama. But at the same time, my man, you're on the campaign trail trashing Trump vigorously and his supporters left and right. And now it's like, let's come together. And I thought it was interesting as well as I read through this note from Obama when he says here, America's been through a lot, a historic pandemic and price hikes resulting from the pandemic. Now, let's be very clear. There were probably going to be some price hikes coming out of the pandemic. But let's not forget that you guys, with VP Harris as the tie-breaking vote, absolutely blew out the budget in 2021 with the American Rescue Plan and the so-called Inflation Reduction Act that spent trillions of dollars we didn't have, months after the pandemic was effectively over. And by over, I mean the economy was back to like normal again. It's not like people were sitting in their houses hiding with masks on. You guys printed trillions of dollars. Harris was the tie-breaking vote. And that is the thing that spearheaded inflation into 2022. That right there. You cannot blame the pandemic for historic price hikes. It was how our government reacted in the wake of the pandemic that caused inflation. It wasn't the pandemic itself. That's a rewriting of history. And that's why I don't have a lot of confidence that when it comes to basic economic policy, they really have a clue to what they're doing here. I mean, Obama's saying that people feel like they're working harder than ever, but they're treading water. Okay, why is that? Why is it that when you look at the last 4 years, you've had these massive price increases? So not just food and cost of living like rent, but in things like insurance, right? I mean, just to the moon. Car insurance. Also, your health insurance. That goes up every year. I thought that the government getting involved 15 years ago with Obamacare was going to fix that for everybody. Oh, it didn't? It's almost like the more the government plays a role in any part of the economy, the more expensive that part of the economy seems to get. Let's all put 2 and 2 together and get 4. That would definitely be a step in the right direction. And that is how you get this thing back on track. The one thing I'll agree with Obama on is when he says here, the good news is that the problems are solvable. He's right. They are solvable. And now we're finally in a position where we have the people in the room that can solve it. 913-408-7957 on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Mike's in Kansas City. Go ahead, big fella.
Yeah, in a strange sort of way, I feel sorry for Kamala. She was thrown into a situation she was never qualified for, never prepared for. But, you know, just like senile Biden, they're put out in places and they exploit people. It'd be like me going to a Chiefs game wearing a jersey, their quarterback going senile and taking me out of the stands and putting me as a quarterback. You know, I wouldn't know what I was doing. I'd be totally unqualified for it.
But if you had a Mahomes jersey on, you might look like the part, right? There you go. Okay. That's not bad. Took a little bit to get to the punchline there, Mike, but I appreciate the humor. 7:16 on a Thursday morning. Quentin Lucas is coming up in 20 minutes. 913-408-7957. We're here with you on 95.7 FM KCMO and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Laura Kelly putting up this post on X yesterday. And it was not a good night for Laura Kelly. I'll explain why here in a second. But Laura Kelly, the governor of Kansas, wrote on X yesterday afternoon, "We know Kansans, regardless of political party, support expanding Medicaid. That's why nearly 90% of Democrats and over 63% of Republicans indicated they're in favor of Medicaid expansion in the 2024 Kansas Speak survey. Now it's time for the Kansas legislature to act." Well, that's not going to happen because Laura Kelly had a bad night on Tuesday. Laura Kelly has a PAC that spent millions of dollars trying to break the supermajority in the Kansas Senate and the Kansas House. Meaning she wanted to not necessarily get Democrats obviously in control of the state House or the state Senate, but just break it so they didn't have the votes to override her with a supermajority in the Senate or the House, which they did have the last couple of years. But it was dicey because there were some Republicans that wouldn't want to override her vetoes of certain pieces of legislation. So she spent a lot of money, and she tried to do it right here in Johnson County, and it didn't work. And this is what's fascinating. And I know there's a lot of Republicans in Johnson County who are upset with how things went on Tuesday night. And overall, they should be. I mean, they more or less got wiped out in all the county races. Johnson County is a reliably Democratic county. It's no more Democratic than it was 4 years ago. It voted for Harris by the same margin it voted for Biden. So it didn't shift towards Biden, but it didn't shift towards Trump either. It just stayed where it was. Dr. Reddy in the 3rd district race did a little better than Amanda Atkins 2 years ago, but Sharice David still won by double digits. Democrats won the sheriff's race as well. They did well in the county commission races, but they didn't do well in the state Senate races and the state House races that Laura Kelly was trying to flip. Couple of notable state senators here in Johnson County. Our buddy Mike Thompson, former weatherman in Shawnee, he held on for a win. Kelly Warren in Overland Park, she held on for a win. Those are two of the key Republican races that Laura Kelly wanted to flip, and they spent a lot of money trying to flip them. And instead, the Republicans held on. So it's weird. It just depends on where you were in Johnson County. And now these Republicans won by small margins, but listen, when you're losing a lot of other things countywide, you try to find the wins where you can. So then Laura Kelly puts up this post yesterday saying it's time to act on Medicaid expansion. Well, here's what's interesting. The poll that she cited there, right, for Medicaid expansion in Kansas, it came from Fort Hays State University. That is the same Fort Hays State University that put out the poll last week that said Donald Trump was only up 5 points in Kansas. Remember that? It had all of local media, even national media picked up on it. As they were trying to project strength for Kamala Harris's team, they cited this Fort Hays State poll that showed Donald Trump only up by 5 points in Kansas. Can you believe it? Oh, my goodness, there's something happening in the heartland. Whoops. Donald Trump won Kansas by 16 points. Even the weathermen, who are usually wrong about stuff, were like, whoa, that was a bad prediction. That didn't go too well now, did it? Trump did better in Kansas as a whole than he did 4 years ago. What does that tell you? Just like they had that poll up in Iowa showing Kamala Harris was winning by 3 last week, Donald Trump won it by 13. It wasn't close. So I don't know if I'm Laura Kelly, I'm not sure I'd be citing polls that were off by double digits from just a week ago to try to push Medicaid expansion on the Kansas legislature, especially after she had a very rough night when it came to trying to flip key Senate and House seats right here in Johnson County. Did not go her way. But this has obviously been a big push for her, this Medicaid expansion, and she wants to get it done. We will talk to Ty Masterson. He is the Senate president in Kansas at 8:30, and just get his feel on holding on to that supermajority, what it means, and what the state might be looking at with Governor Kelly coming up in January. 7:51, happy Thursday morning. It is great to be here on KCMO. We just got done with Quentin Lucas kind of dissecting and breaking down what happened on Tuesday and the shift that you've seen around the country towards Donald Trump. And it's happening in literally every subgroup except for 2. There are only 2 subgroups that did not shift towards Donald Trump from 4 years ago. The only 2 that shifted towards Kamala Harris was the 65-plus crowd. They moved slightly. So the old hippies moved slightly towards Kamala Harris, and white college women. They moved slightly, like a couple of points, towards Kamala Harris. That's it. Everybody else, white non-college men, white non-college women, whites overall, males 45 to 64, white college men, females overall, 30 to 44-year-olds shifted 15 points towards Trump. 18 to 29-year-olds shifted 15 points towards Trump. Hispanics moved almost 20 points towards Trump. Asians moved 20 points towards Trump. Blacks moved 10 points towards Trump. That's the branding problem we just talked about with Quentin Lucas. And somebody sent me this. It was pretty funny. You know, with all these moving parts, it looks like older millennials and Gen Xers are the ones who delivered Donald Trump the White House when you break it down based on age. So like that 35 to 54 crowd, which we crush it in, that demographic with, and there's a reason for that. The older hippies are kind of slowly maybe moving a hair to the left. I mean, you see it all the time around town. And then younger people also shifting towards Donald Trump, especially younger males. But still, the bulk of the party right now are the older millennials and Gen Xers. And I saw this tweet. It was pretty clever. I thought it was good. Gen X isn't old enough to be senile, but not young enough to be stupid. It's the perfect demographic. And I thought that's outstanding. That is absolutely outstanding stuff. And it's spot on as well when you're analyzing it. Not old enough to be senile, but not young enough to be too stupid about everything. 913-408-7957. And Quentin Lucas, usually, I didn't think he'd actually answer my question about being interested in DNC chair. But that is the reason I asked him is that is a spot that he may look at to further his political career. Notice what he said there. If you listen closely to what Quentin Lucas said on this show just now, I asked him about, serving out the next 2.5 years as Kansas City mayor. And he said, It looks like I'll be here for the next 2.5 years. You catch that? He clearly was looking and would have been interested in a position in D.C. with the Harris administration. That is indisputable. And he said as much just now on the show. He said as much on the show just now. He goes, it looks like I'll be here for the next 2.5 years. Listen, God bless him. He ain't going to Wisconsin because he likes the fall this time of year up there. That's not why he's in the Badger State. What you do when you're in politics, if you're someone who wants to be in a position for a gig, you fly yourself to these different swing states. You appear like you're a team player. You're helping your team. You're helping your party. And the goal is obviously you get something on the back end. It's not unique to Quentin Lucas. Politicians do it on both sides of the aisle all the time. They want to look like a team player to then get a job on the back end or get some appointment on the back end. And when he said on the show, it looks like I'll be here for the next 2.5 years, that was him basically saying, yeah, I was applying for a job. And God bless him. That's fine. That's America. Do what he wants. But then he also expressed interest in maybe being involved in the DNC. And that has been a launching point for a lot of people on both sides of the aisle, whether it's the DNC or the RNC. Howard Dean has been the DNC chair. Tim Kaine, who was Hillary's VP pick, was the DNC chair. We all remember Donna Brazile was the DNC chair for a period of time. So, being involved with the DNC on a national level builds the brand, gets you in touch with donors. That may be a next move for a guy like Quentin Lucas. Frank's on KCMO. What's up, Frank?
Hey, good morning, Pete. I was telling John I'm working really hard not to be a gloating conservative right now. But Mayor Lucas, cogent remarks for a change. What a refreshing interview this morning. Thanks for that. He, the one thing I would add to his comments is that hopefully the Democrat Party will hear in the future that they better never again compromise integrity by, that may be an oxymoron with Democrat, but anyway, that they would compromise by making a financially expedient decision, i.e., keeping Kamala Harris in the race in order to use the war chest, rather than a principled decision of let's go ahead and let the party speak to who the best candidate may be and let the chips fall where they may and raise the money necessary behind that candidate. So yeah. That was probably one of the biggest compromises. I talked to a number of Democrats, and that was one of the comments was they were so disappointed in the party having abandoned the process. They had better hear that loud and clear.
Well said, Frank. Dennis, go ahead, buddy.
Hey, Pete. Good morning. The 65 and older crowd, there's some part of that I don't do. I do podcast radio like you. They're still the ones that are listening to the View, the evening news, the local news. I mean, that's probably why they went up. Plus, something that people really don't understand, and my extensive study and dating in this age group, the women are very swayed by what their kids tell them to do. So they're told, and the group that you said, the young women are telling the older people, vote for Kamala. And one more question. I don't know if you've addressed this yet or know anything about it. Why did the Democrats drop by 12 million votes, and why did Trump drop by 1.5 million? I don't
know.
Looked and can't figure that out.
I don't know. I mean, enthusiasm, utilizing mail-in ballots 4 years ago, mail-in ballots going to everyone and their dead grandma. I mean, I don't know. There's no answer to that right now. Is it sketchy? Is it fishy? Is it weird? Sure. But how can I answer that? Right? I mean, I don't know. We can all speculate, but no one has that answer.